So the Drew to the Bucks stuff stole the show for the night, but this one's worth talking about as well. The Rockets send Robert Covington to the Blazers for Trevor Ariza, a first-round pick this year, number 16, as well as a protected first from Portland next year. I don't know what the protections are on that just yet. It would be kind of wild if the Blazers traded 2 firsts for Covington, but maybe you're that desperate to find some sort of an improvement with this roster. For Houston's sake, it's pretty obvious they got some picks. They got out of Ariza's contract in 1 season. You could look at this for Houston as the beginning of the teardown, and it shows that Westbrook and Harden are going to be gone soon. But you could also just be like, yeah, they could flip those picks for something and do a better job of convincing those two to want to stay. I don't know. We'll have to see with the Rockets. But for the Blazers' sake, I think this is really where the meat of this whole thing is. So I don't think it's a secret that I've been screaming for however long for the Blazers to finally trade a pick. And they did it, so I got to give them credit here. I mean, you imagine the starting 5 is Dame, CJ, Covington, Collins, Nurkic. Although I guess you could also go with, for the front court, you could go Gary Trent at the 3, Covington at the 4, Nurkic at the 5. We're going to have to see if the Blazers want to bring back Melo. Rodney Hood is involved in all this as well. So they are going to have quite a few options for different lineups that they want to use around CJ and Dame. We could see some Zach Collins at center with Covington at the 4, and then Gary Trent, Rodney Hood, whoever at the 3. I guess that would maximize this team's shooting. Whether Zach Collins can play center like that, I don't know. Against some teams, he definitely can't, but against others, perhaps. Now, before I talk about Covington specifically on the roster, besides lineup stuff, I do want to say, I hope the Blazers didn't jump the gun here. As in, could they have gotten somebody better if they waited like 12 more hours? Because I imagine phones are going off like crazy all around the league right now, and did the Blazers perhaps panic and be like, oh crap, if we don't do this, we might not get anybody? Which could be a good thing. The worst case scenario would have been another offseason where the Blazers didn't do anything. But I just hope that tomorrow we don't see whoever get moved and it's like, oh crap, the Blazers really could have used that guy. We'll have to see. We have no way of really knowing that stuff. We don't know about all the conversations being had. Anyway, if we talk about Covington, defensively, how can he help this team besides just what position they're going to put him at? Well, is he going to be their on-ball defender guarding whoever they need him to guard any given night? No, not really. Covington is not a great on-ball defender. He's cool, but he's not a transformative guy in that sense. His real value is as a team defender. He, of course, can switch across kind of every position depending on the team you're playing. Yeah, you can still mismatch hunt on him, as we saw with Chris Paul in the Round 1 series. But against a lot of teams, you can do pretty okay if Covington is switched onto the 2-guard or the power forward or whatever, sometimes the center. He is one of the better rebounding wings in the league as well. Even before the Rockets were putting him at center, he was grabbing about 5 to 6 to 7 rebounds a game. So that'll help out Collins and Nurkic on the boards. And it also makes the Blazers really big. Now again, I'm assuming Collins is going to be the starting power forward. You have Covington, who's 6'7" with a 7'2" wingspan. Zach Collins, who's 7 feet with a 7'1" wingspan. Both of them move pretty well. And you got Nurkic, who I feel like is not one of the better defensive bigs in the league, but he effectively has been for the Blazers. I mean, whenever he and Dame have been in the game, their on-off numbers have always been fantastic. Now, even with that said, I think the fear with the Blazers, just looking at their 3 frontcourt guys, is that Covington, Collins, and Nurkic have not always been the best at not fouling. I mean, Nurkic has averaged about 3 fouls a game, and he's barely played 30 minutes a game for most of his career. He was, of course, a foul machine in the bubble. Collins has always fouled a little too much, and I think you could say a similar thing for Covington as well. Now, again, I think they could make up for some of that just by being maybe the best defensive rebounding team in the league with these 3 guys, so we'll have to see. I think the individual defenders, as in we're going to go at whoever in one-on-ones here, whether it's Dame, CJ, or even Covington, I think there are some weaknesses there, and that's the sort of thing that pops up more in the postseason than it does in the regular season. But this is still an improvement defensively, so that's nice. As far as offense is concerned, I mean, there's not much to talk about. Covington's going to chuck a whole bunch of threes. He's going to spot up in the corner, and you hope they go in. He's been a bit of a streaky shooter throughout his time. The past year, he actually wasn't awesome from three. He shot 33% on about 7 a game between the Wolves and the Rockets. But for most of his career, he's been above average. Now, we have seen him play really poorly in some playoff series, like that one against the Celtics. We've also seen him be better, like against OKC in this round one. Outside of his shooting, he'll grab like one offensive rebound a game, but that's kind of it. I mean, if teams are going to start trapping Dame on pick and rolls and stuff, Covington, while he's a good open shooter, he's not going to kill you for that all the time. There's going to be times where the ball ends up in his hand and he can't go off the dribbles, then he's got to pass it out back to somebody, and then by this point the defense has reshuffled and potentially some possessions are going to get ruined in the playoffs because they can still trap Dame. Now, Gary Trent and Rodney Hood, I would say, make it a little more interesting because those two have more potential off the dribble, I would say. And we'll have to see if you're going to go with Covington at the 4 and maybe Collins at the 5 and really space yourself out as much as possible. Or, I mean, we should remember, Covington has played some time at center, so maybe that as well. If you really, really got to space out against whoever in a tough playoff series, then perhaps that could make the Blazers really tough to defend, at least defensively. I don't know. But again, this just gives the Blazers more options, more lineup variety that they can go to. If something's not going well in a playoff series, if Nurkic is getting played off the floor because the other team's just killing him and pick and roll, spacing the floor out, then it's another thing you can go to, and that's always good. And Covington is usually a good shooter. So I like it. I applaud the Blazers for actually doing something in the offseason for once. But I do still wish they got a guy who could make something happen off the dribble, because I do fear without that guy, this will help, but it's not going to be the big difference maker that I've really wanted from this team. Now, I guess they still have some room to make moves, but it's like, now they don't have this year's pick, which I'm fine with. Again, we're going to have to see with the protections on next year's pick, but now they can't move next year's pick, I'm pretty sure. Protected picks are always confusing to me about whether you can actually move them or not. But then it's like, are they going to move even more picks later on if they want to get real wild this offseason? Well, even if they wanted to, they traded their one tradable contract in Ariza. So at that point, it's like, I don't even know what other options you really have. But you know what? It's an actual move. The Blazers made a real move, so I got to praise them for it, even if I still wish they got a guy who could dribble. But yeah,